It has been 8 months since Bola Tinubu was inaugurated as the 16th president and head of state of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Within the time in question, the president has been able to set some programs and policies in motion, and the impact of those, well, especially the economic sphere, has left an enduring impression in the minds of many Nigerians about his performance in office. Security, or the lack thereof, is also another point upon which President Tinubu's stewardship thus far is being assessed. Niyi Akinsiju is the chairman of the Independent Media and Policy Initiative. Well, he rejoins us now for this quick analysis of President Tinubu's performance report card. Good afternoon again. Thank you for joining us.
The pleasure is mine. Good afternoon, and it's a privilege to be here.
All right. With 8 months in so far of his presidency, how would you assess the performance of President Tinubu and his administration?
From my readings, and of course my institution's reading of the performance of the president, our quick conclusion is that it's providing new building blocks for another form of Nigeria from the Nigeria we used to know. The total consideration is that so far he has deployed policies that had profound impact on the Nigerian nation and the Nigerian people, perhaps in ways that we had never been impacted before. So, but of course, there are different ways of looking at this. From the basic Nigerian point of view, it will appear that some form of pains are being inflicted, some forms of economic pains are being inflicted, for instance, by the withdrawal of the subsidy and the harmonization of the forex windows. But from the policy point of view, we see a movement, a momentum in place as ongoing, where there is a reform of the economic space that would generally impact the Nigerian people, the Nigerian nation too, in the medium to long term. So to a large extent, we believe that these 8 months, it's like laying the foundation for a new Nigeria. So while it may impact many people, including myself, in ways that we had not been impacted before, we are even sustaining ourselves in a way that we had not sustained ourselves before. But we believe that with a little bit of perseverance, things will change. We'll have more money in our pockets, inflation will reduce, and of course, we'll be proud even more to be Nigerians.
Now, but while laying this foundation for a new Nigeria, it's very important, to be empathetic to the sufferings of Nigerians, isn't it? The federal government, announced some steps to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy removal, but its effects have not been felt. Why is this so? What urgent steps should be taken to remedy the situation?
I think the steps are ongoing. There had been talk of the wage award. There had been talk of transport interventions and all that. There had been talk of production of natural gas-driven buses, transportation, and all that. But the truth of the matter is, on the eve of May 29, 2023, Nigeria had its own form of challenges, especially directly derived from the fuel subsidy itself. We were spending whatever we could call our extra cash on fuel subsidy. And of course, it translates to mean that we didn't have much of savings. And if that kind of policy was to be done, whatever may be the palliative as envisioned, we also need a lot of cash backing. The truth of the matter is, and I'm looking at it from the policy point of view, the truth of the matter is there was little savings to even drive the palliative, as it were. So whatever is being managed now, and I think I need to appreciate the average Nigerian for their perseverance so far. It takes a Nigerian person, with such psychological capacity to be stable, to persevere in this condition. But again, if we are hopeful that things will change, then we would have the power and the drive to keep going. The truth of the matter is that so far, the removal of subsidy policy is working. It's not only working, we are seeing fruits. We are seeing the green shoots of its impact on the economy. We are seeing more fiscal funds being earned. We are seeing more money being saved, perhaps for the first time. And of course, we're also seeing the possibility of deployments of these funds into capital. We see the prospect that for the first time, the capital budget of the federal government may likely perform up to 90% in 2024, if not more, because more money will be earned. And of course, if this money are earned, we believe that they will be properly employed, and it will serve as a huge investment in that deficient gap that we call infrastructural gap. So the truth for me is that we may have, even now in the short run, a little challenge about providing for those palliatives as envisioned. We did not have much of savings because we were spending money on subsidizing our fuel consumption. We were even spending money subsidizing our foreign exchange rates. That's the truth.
Well, I'm going to take you up on a criticism that has been quite prevalent in the last couple of weeks, especially since President Tinubu has taken personal leave to France. In that short amount of time, Ekiti State has seen a mass amount of kidnappings. ECOWAS has seen 3 of its members leave, 3 very important members that are pretty much holding the security of the Sahel together. We've seen killings in Plateau State ever since Christmas and New Year's, school children being kidnapped. I mean, it's nonstop. The criticism is from Atiku Abubakar calling the president a tourist in chief. It seems like he has abandoned ship at the time that his people need him the most, or even if he hasn't been absent, the optics of not being on ground or overly sympathetic at a time when Nigerians have been pushed to a corner and have been watching all of these terrible things happen. What do you make of these criticisms, and what could be better done in order to keep them abated so that we can see the plan that you were talking about earlier? Because it's very clear a lot of people have no idea. They cannot see what it is that you previously said, that we will all be the benefits of all this hardship.
Well, it's a process. What I've earlier said, it's a simple process. If we do this, this is what will be the outcome, and it's clear. The fact is that if we are spending so much money, I'm sorry, I have to also revisit that. If you are spending so much money on subsidizing consumption, you won't have much to spend on investment. So if you stop subsidizing consumption, you will have much to spend on investment. That's just the long and short of that. Then, of course, going forward on Alhaji Atiku Abubakar's criticism, well, first, he's a Nigerian, and he has a right to criticize whatever he perceives as going wrong, especially with the government that he also has a stake in, because he contested for that office with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So I do not fault him in any way for expressing his right, I mean his opinion in that regard. But in what context? We suddenly had this issue of upsurge in criminality, and if we looked at the past so many months, since July 2023, hardly have we had such recorded. So for us, after reviewing the background to the security environment, it will appear as if the criminals, as it were, saw an opportunity to strike, and they struck. The fact is that the federal government is still sitting very tightly in control and being in charge of the security environment. In terms of preparation, in terms of equipping the security agencies, in terms of morale, boosting the morale of personnel and all that, it's for what I do, by following policies, by analyzing policies, I think there's a state of equilibrium, not much of gaps or deficiencies are identified, in that space. It would appear that something just went wrong and this happened, and it's unfortunate. It's not something that we want to even celebrate. But for me, we know that the president is in charge. I see a president that had continued to engage the security forces, the security chiefs, the IGP, and of course even the departments of security. So it's unfortunate this happened. Then why did he have to travel? I don't speak for the presidency, unfortunately. But what I know is that in current times, being physically on ground does not make a difference, because the whole world has become a village. You can manage anything anywhere from anywhere. That's the only thing you cannot do as a president of Nigeria from outside the territorial jurisdiction, the territorial space of a particular country, is to sign a bill, for instance, into law. Perhaps that's the only thing you cannot do. But in terms of networking, in terms of oversighting your jurisdiction, you can do that from anywhere. You don't need to be on ground to do that. I am very sure whatever the president is doing, wherever he is conducting the business of the Nigerian state, because he is both Bola Ahmed Tinubu and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu by identification, by status, wherever he may be geographically. So the presidents, former vice president's articles, criticism is simply a political show. It's like you need to do that. But for me, it's not profound, it's not fundamental. And I want to appeal, really, to our politicians that when you're going to criticize in context. Let people see substance. That even if you ask people like us, we would objectively be able to say you have done right by even raising these issues.
Well, I don't know if a lot of Nigerians would agree with you. You talked about his comments being political, but the fact remains that people are being kidnapped, people are being killed. These are not political issues, these are real issues. You also talked about something going wrong, and then the criminals striking. So at whose doorstep do we put this blame? What was this administration doing, before something went wrong and then they allowed the criminals to strike? The policies that the president has been taking, are they well thought out? Are they well implemented? Is it people friendly? Joe Ajaero, that's the president of the NLC, he said that heeding the advice of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund has never benefited Nigeria in any way, and is calling for a review of all government policies. Is it possible that we should be looking elsewhere, probably, for a homegrown solution to this domestic crisis we are facing?
You've mixed a lot of dimension into this. Perhaps we look at security and we deliver on it before we get into Joe Ajaero's conception of what is wrong with IMF and World Bank and all that. I am not a World Bank or IMF. I'm not an IMF fan too, but there are certain issues that need to be concluded and that need to be assessed. For instance, if you're talking about there are kidnappings, there are killings and all that, it's unfortunate. No Nigerian should lose his soul, his life, no matter the situation. But again, don't forget that the Nigerian space is close to 1 million square kilometers, and to that extent, you have this huge space to manage. And once in a while, there will be there would be a slowdown, no matter how efficiently managed the security space is. And I am even impressed that in recent time, a 50 billion naira fund had been approved for what is called known as Praluka. That is the provision by facilitating a non-kinetic mode of engaging the insecurity issues that we have in Nigeria. And that is to say, most of the spaces that we have had killings and kidnappings happening are ungoverned space. So government, by reading, wants to make its presence felt, by providing social amenities for those communities in those ungoverned spaces. That, to a large extent, would create a manageable space for government, and of course will also help in mobilizing communities in those areas to also collaborate with security agencies. That is an approach. But again, security can never be 100% enforced anywhere in the world. There will always be social miscreants. There will always be criminals that are looking out to exploit opportunities in the space. But the important thing is, in the larger space, what's the percentage of criminality that we are recording? To a large extent, it's not something that we call an epidemic, as some people are trying to say, are trying to put it. It's not an epidemic. But however, let me note that even if one person,
I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but I'm sure that the family members of the victims will not agree with this, your analysis. For instance, in Ekiti State, we had a bus filled with nursery school children, the driver and the teacher abducted. Do we need to wait for it to escalate further before we call it an epidemic, before we take action?
It should not. It should not. And that is why I'm saying that even at that, I know that the Nigerian security forces, as it were, are properly equipped to handle this. And that's why, if you review what had been happening over time in the capacity of the Nigerian security force, there is a new capacity for investigation. And that is why when you hear of a crime happening somewhere, or that happened somewhere, there is a possibility of unraveling that crime in the shortest possible time. So I have faith that will be unraveled. I have faith that those who are responsible for perpetrating that criminality will be brought to book. And let us go to Joe Ajaero. Joe Ajaero's position is the classical socialist position. I come from that point of view too. But the truth of the matter is, when you are managing an economy, you must determine what you want. Do you want to run a social or welfare-driven economy, or you want to run a market-driven economy? You can, over time, we had this misconception of what is called mixed economy. It does not run. It was this kind of economy that Venezuela ran, that put them into the huge inflationary straits they found themselves. We must determine if we want to run a market-driven economy, and how do we go about it. Unfortunately, we have run what we call the mixed form economy over the past so many years, more than 60 years. It has been our template. So what this government is doing is to wean us off that model to a new model of market-driven. This will not be without, of course, the welfare aspect of it as a base of attending or addressing the needs of the vulnerables amongst us. And one of that is to say that money of the state must be invested for productivity and for production. You do not invest money just because you need to create convenience. It is not about convenience. It should be about productivity, because productivity will earn you more, and in earning more, you'll be able to invest more. It becomes a circle rather than a circle of consumption. Circle of consumption will never provide the need or provide growth or development momentum in any economy. So here we are. If the IMF had been saying that withdraw subsidy, and for a very long time we had resisted it as a sovereign nation, which we have the right to, now we understand that there is a need for us to change that model, because when you are running that kind of model and you run into an inflation straight, for instance, as we are going through now, and you still want to sustain a subsidy regime, no matter what you do in terms of monetary authority policy, you will not get the result, because at every point in time, errant money from the subsidy are getting into the economy. At the wrong time, you also have you spending money, sovereign fund, to import this product into your jurisdiction. So before you know it, you have liquidity in the system that you cannot track where they belong to. So whatever the monetary policy authorities are doing will have little impact. I can take you to Ghana. Ghana had a 53% inflation rate about 7-8 months ago. Now it has fallen to 23% because they are running an open market economy, and they were applying the basic principle of monetary policy interventions, and because that economy had little liquidity that could not be accounted for, this is the result they had.
Well, all right, so for the sake of time,
continue with the...
For the sake of time, Mr. Akinsiju, fair enough, we hear your explanation, right. Okay. But very briefly, do we not put ourselves at a disadvantage, and albeit at a risk, as a nation and a people, when we don't call a spade, we don't call it like we see it, especially for fear of retribution? It reminds me of the Hans Christian Andersen book, The Emperor's New Clothes. In case you're not aware of what happens there, it's pretty much everyone not wanting to say exactly what's going on for fear of retaliation from the king or the emperor. It seems like we have a similar situation within Nigeria. It seems like, it seems that those who are more astute, the educated class, those who are in the elite positions and in the power positions aren't exactly saying the truth about what it is that is happening, which causes a whole trickle-down effect in terms of perception and how to move the needle forward. Do you see this as a problem?
But I do not exactly get the anchor of your submission, because I am here talking as one that follows policies of government, and at the federal and the subnational level. And as far as I'm concerned, here we have policies at the federal level over the past 8 months that I believe had potentials to drive development. I wouldn't know if some other people are saying otherwise, or whatever they are saying it may be wrong. But as far as I'm concerned, and my colleagues where we work, for us, we believe that if there is a elite consensus around some of these policies, as it were, it will impact the Nigerian nation. And the truth of the matter is, if these policies are not applied now, and we continue with what we have been doing before, would we be able to sustain it? Not forgetting the fact that by March 2023, the federal government itself was finding it difficult to pay salaries because we're spending the bulk of our money on subsidizing fuel. We were even spending the bulk of our money on defending the forex. At every point in time, I mean, it's notorious news now that at every point, every month, over the last, before June 2023, the CBN was coming to the market with $1.5 billion, to defend the naira. For who? Who are those consuming the naira? For what purpose? And you now realize that immediately the fuel subsidy regime was announced, in 1 month, the total volume of consumption of fuel fell by more than 20 million liters. Who were those responsible for that 20 million liters that was added into our national consumption?
Well, Mr. Akinsiju,
these are the things we need to consider.
Definitely,
If these policies
You have asked very, very valid questions, which I believe this administration should also answer, which is part of the issues we're talking about. But we are out of time. We thank you very much for joining us on Newsday. Chairman, Independent Media and Policy Initiative, Niyi Akinsiju. Thank you so much for joining us.